Welcome, everyone, to Call to Action. We've got a real quick episode for you to recap this past week's Schmoedown news. It's Melissa. I am here. Introduce yourself, please.
Hey, guys, it's Dylan. You remember me from some of your favorite other episodes. We're here with a nice little snack-sized episode where this is just to get us through the whole weekend, right, Melissa?
That is correct. Yes, it's not going to be real in length. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of Ben and Andrew news lately. So, but yeah, just a real quick episode to get you guys through. So, I guess we'll start out with Founding Fathers versus, oh my gosh, Founding Fathers. Who did they play?
Oh, gosh, they played the Mild-Berries today.
The Mild-Berries, yes. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the pre-match from that episode.
Sure, I'll kind of cover into that. So as we start in on the match, it starts in with Zipper talking with Grace, and they're having this build-up, and you can see them talking, and it's implying that Zip's going to be into corruption, and there's something going on here. Grace talks with him, and I don't know, he has these grand ideas that he's just going to take over as leader of corruption, and that he's going to sit here and be Stacy's new partner. Like, he's just going to reinvent the whole thing, and then it all just plays out to be a big joke on Zipper's part. I love that Grace in this whole scene is just sitting here like, I do not recall this conversation, and it's just like, it's just the biggest joke on Zipper, which actually kind of hurts my heart because Zipper is a sweet dude. I don't see his heel switch being a big thing. It almost makes me wonder if they're not just going to go back and he's just not going to join back up with Winston after this. What do you think?
Yeah. Honestly, part of it just kind of makes me wonder if, I don't know if there was ever kind of from the beginning an intention for Stacy to have a specific partner, or if kind of the powers that be have just been kind of watching this whole thing play out, and they saw that a lot of the fans were kind of gravitating towards Zipper, so maybe they kind of played into that a little bit. So for me, I don't have anyone specifically in mind that I see as her being, the new partner, other than, I do feel like someone with maybe a little bit more tentpole films, like the Star Wars, the superhero films, things like that, I think would complement her well.
Right.
So, someone maybe along that line. Maybe even Christian himself. I don't know. I just kind of see someone maybe with a little bit more kind of big blockbuster type film knowledge would be a good compliment to her. Because I think, not that she really lacks anything, but I think she kind of has more of like the indie circuit, the rom-coms, things like that. I think she has covered. So I think really kind of the balance to that is finding someone who knows the other side. So I don't have anyone specific in mind, maybe Christian, like I said, but
that'd be interesting to see Christian come back into it, especially to just drop himself into a storyline now.
Yeah.
But at this point, I think we're all just throwing darts and just saying, whatever lands. But I do kind of agree with you. It does feel like the whole plot was they probably didn't have somebody originally intentional in mind. They just wanted to have another storyline, like another thing for people to get excited for throughout the whole time. And then they were just like,
right,
let's just see how all the other teams develop. You never know. They might have a team break up. It could, something that you mentioned with that we'll kind of tease later. You know what? I'll say my prediction. There's a breakup of a certain team in one of the later matches, and one or both of those people I could see actually being an interesting balance for Stacy. But I think about who works well with Stacy, and then I think, does that work in corruption though? And that's
right,
where it gets a little hazy. But
yeah, agreed.
We can talk about Stacy's partner all day, every day until we're blue in the face, but we'll find out probably here in about a week or two anyway. So let's get into the matches then.
Sure, yeah.
So we start out in this match and we have Founding Fathers against, technically, I almost want to say it's the premiere of the Mild-Berries for about half this match. So it's about the Mild-Berries and AKA the Wild-Berries. And they actually did pretty well first round, or Founding Fathers did really bad last round. By the end of round one, it's 12-8, and it's not too bad. 12-8 being next to each other is not a terrible go away into round two.
No, I feel like they both got, or Makuga and Dewberry, I feel like they both got questions that I really didn't think they would get.
Mhm.
So, whether they've been studying, whether they've just been slacking off in past matches, I don't know. I will say for the whole wild berries thing, I did feel like it was, I know it wasn't intended to be, but it was kind of a callback to the um, Team Action Mom entrance, which is my favorite entrance
Yeah.
of all time. So I feel like we've already seen this entrance before and we've already seen it better. So, like, I wasn't
Shocker.
like, but I mean, I feel like it was a very similar entrance where they came in acting one way and then they ended up being another way, which, like I said, we've seen it before.
Right.
Um, but I, they did do well in round one. Like I said, they got some answers that I didn't expect them to get. And I mean, honestly, genuinely, it seemed like when they switched to the wild berries, that's really kind of when things went off the rail. So,
That's an understatement. For how the
so I
match
mean,
goes after that too.
yeah, and I mean, I don't know if they just kind of, I mean, I don't know if that was the plan for the match all along, was for them to Hulk out, and you know, I don't know if there's a better term for it, but I don't know if that was the plan all along. If they expected that they would be, in decent shape,
Mhm.
that if they would have done that, or if it was just kind of they went into it expecting to be so far down that that was just going to be their like Hail Mary moment, that they were just going to like go crazy, and then if they could make this ultimate comeback, it would be like this storyline of lore.
Mhm.
But clearly it didn't work out for them.
This is one of those things where I sat there and I was more intrigued by the overall, like, the facade of the match other than the match itself. Like, right around the point where they switch from mild to wild, we Makuga just starts doing what Makuga does best and just starts acting out, pushes the belt down, does flosses with the belt, just does, which admittedly is very, very funny. But it is one of those things where I walked away from the match thinking, I'm like, did they script this, or like, I wonder if with the Wild Berries matches they're just like, just do whatever comes to mind and we'll figure out a story around it later. And
Yeah.
I'm almost 50-50 on that. I'm like, I can see where Christian is like, all right, because like the storyline does play into forming a match that happens on Monday, which we'll be talking about shortly. But I mean, with all that in mind, I could see where it's just they improvised on it because they're just let them act out as crazy as possible, which is honestly what they do best. Wild Berries, say what you will on the record, they are one of the most entertaining teams that we have in the whole league, and they have that trophy to have no matter what. Um, but as far as the match goes, the round two they did okay. They spin the comedy. They did pretty well on that. They took a loss on what bubblegum company? Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, sponsored in Talladega Nights, and then Founding Fathers actually run the wheel pretty much with Tim Burton for the most part, which I was actually surprised. I didn't think that would be one of the strengths to either of them. I don't know. There's not been giving me a reason not to, but
Yeah.
I would think just with Roca it might not be, but it seemed actually to be pretty good. So I guess they're studying up. They're trying not to take that surprise loss again, and man, I think they really want corruption. But yeah, I mean, then we
Hmm.
ran into round three. Round three goes pretty poorly for the Wild Berries. I will say there's actually one really awesome moment in that where they're sitting there and they're just talking to each other, and it's clearly breaking the rules, but like nobody even called them on it until like way after the fact. And they're like, "You guys can't talk to each other." Like, I love that. I'm like, Makuga's been playing this game longer than probably literally anybody in that whole thing, and they're just chiming along, don't even thinking twice about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
So just to kind of switch topics a little bit from kind of what we saw from the mild berries slash wild berries to founding fathers. One thing I kind of wanted to point out was the thing that I kind of appreciated, which I'm a huge Dan Murrell fan. I would love for him to win a team title. I wish he didn't have the partner he did, but he does. And like all of us in the Action Army, you know, it's hard to cheer for John Roca. It's hard, if not impossible, to cheer for John Roca.
Fairly impossible to cheer for John Roca.
Yeah, but one thing I could really appreciate is Dan seemed to. I mean, it's been kind of ever since his return, but Dan seems to be a much more lighthearted Dan. Like, he even kind of joked about Makuga running around like an idiot. But I mean, it was in a very lighthearted way. He doesn't seem to be taking himself as seriously. So I really do like that Dan's new personality has lightened up quite a bit. I don't think he's ever going to be one of those like personality driven competitors, but it's good that he seems to be having a good time with it.
Right.
That said, going forward, I think the thing I'm kind of struggling with is I feel like Founding Fathers are maybe the ones that are destined to dethrone the Shirewolves. And it makes it a very difficult thing because I really do want to see the Shirewolves be dethroned. But man, it's hard to cheer for the Founding Fathers knowing that one half of the Founding Fathers is John Stephen Roca. So I'm kind of curious, with a possible future Founding Fathers Shirewolves match, kind of where does your, and this is all speculation because there's got to be a few wins ahead of that before that would happen, but they seem like the closest to doing it, I think.
I almost want to make an argument against it. Like, I don't know. It's somewhere in my gut. Maybe it's just in that gut where I just don't want Roca to sit there and win a title or be the one to do that one again. I will agree with you on the Merle point really quickly. Is that I think that his personality has been starting to show a little bit more. I think that instead of trying to be a character of Dan Merle, he's being more comfortable in just being Dan. And I think a lot of us are responding to that better because he is just, I mean, he's a pretty nice, entertaining dude, and I like that. I mean, I think that Bibiani has really laid a lot of work to sit here and just be a nice guy in the league, and for that to be fine as well. But that aside, looking at Founding Fathers on Shirewolves, I don't know, man. It is crazy. This Teams League is one of my favorite things to talk about right now, just because it is just so baffling that we have just like so many teams in this league right now, and we'll use this to transition into the next match here soon. We have Founding Fathers, the family. We have Who's the Boss still. We have Evil Geniuses. We have Stacy and her soon-to-be partner. We have the Time Machine with Ethan Irwin and Janine, who still needs to premiere. Like, these are all 6 or so teams that I could say, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they were, like, champions or anything. But then you ask me, do you see any of these teams beating the Shirewolves? And right now I'm just like, no. Like, my gut instinct is just like, no, I don't see any of these teams, no matter how completely absurdly good the league is right now. I'm like, I don't see any of them. Like, honestly, and it's the strange thing for me, I don't see the Founding Fathers doing it because they're still, I think they're still trying to find their leagues. I think they have the potential to do it. I mean, John and, Roca and Merle are both, like, obviously proved champions. So, like, they have that potential to do it. But I still think their chemistry is still working out on their team stuff because, sure, they beat Wildberries with that, but I want to see another match like Corruption to see what potential they have for them. My strange bold pick, though, is still, and of course, this is such an Action Army response. I think the family, if Andrew gets to sit here and be full heel in that match, has one of the best chances out of the whole league to sit there and get away with it. Just because I think that with the Shirewolves, that they could probably, if you can shake them on the psychological level and affect that gameplay, and both the Drews sit there and just start crushing question after question after question, I think that gives them the biggest edge out of all the teams. Because I don't think JTE is going to sit there and be full heel and try to play the psychological warfare. Who's the Boss isn't going to do it. Founding Fathers isn't going to do it. Corruption, maybe. And that's a weird thought, too, to think that Corruption would be that. But in my gut, I just don't see, even with all that, I'm still having to rationalize ways for the Shirewolves to lose, and I just don't see it happening right now.
Yeah. You did bring up a good point with the family. Of course, I thought that Who's the Boss would be a pick to dethrone them. With our boy Ben, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And with the backstory between Riley and Clark, I thought that might be kind of play into the psychology of it. So I really thought they had a shot at it. And, obviously they fell short to the Odd Couple. So, maybe the family will kind of rise up in the ranks. Are they on the schedule yet for a match?
I don't believe so. Which is kind of I remember like we've all pretty much established that they're supposed to be playing Inky in the Brain, but looking at the schedule right now, there's a lot of TBD match. Oh, okay, that TBD match is the one that we already know. Bibbs, Cushing, Stacey Howard, her partner, Kevin Smets. Yeah, so it's not this month. But my guess would be, say, next month, right around the time we're starting to see the Houston event and stuff also, that is probably going to be rolling around the same time. Because we do tend to keep getting, like, matches of the same people in bulk. Is that just me, where we'll see, like, one or two people kind of play throughout the month, and then we won't see them for a couple more months, and then it's just the bulk of new people in the game?
Yeah. Well, I think the problem with the family is, just depending on when they get started, I'm sure that it's going to be even if they were undefeated, it would probably take at least probably at least 3 matches for them to even get a title shot at all. So then you're looking several months into the future, and I really don't want to live in a Schmoedown world where the Shire Rules have the belts for most of 2019. So
I hate to break it, Melissa, to you, that is probably going to be the case. I would be. And you know what? To be fair, Odd Couple surprised me before with the Who's the Boss match, so I could be surprised. And the same strengths I make for the family, I could see Snyder going heel and really trying to get into people. Say what you will, Snyder is really great in tag matches with trying to play the psychological game. I think he's an underrated character amongst like heel fans and stuff like that, though, too. So, honestly, it might be the Odd Couple. If I had to give one team in the whole league right now besides the family on that one, I feel more confident on the Odd Couple after seeing what they did against Who's the Boss.
True.
But,
yeah.
But we will see soon enough. But speaking of tag team matches and speaking of Snyder, that's one half of the Patriots. The other half of the Patriots, Evil Geniuses played JTE and I always forget
Lon Harris.
Yeah, Lon Harris. Yes, Lonathan it is. Played against Superhero News. Melissa, what did you think about this match?
It's hard for me to say because
I kind of feel the same way. It was just
I like Superhero News. And I'm not saying they don't take the game seriously. But I feel like they're just not in the same league as some of the other teams. So, unless they really wanted to, we'll get to this at the end, but unless they really wanted to kind of put their head down, put their studying in, and go like full focus on the Schmoedown, which I think they could do. I think they could, but I feel like they're just coming into it trying to kind of get by on what they know. And what they know is a lot, but I don't think they're doing the studying kind of part as hardcore as these other teams. So I would have liked to see Evil Geniuses maybe up against a stronger opponent, maybe. But it turned out about what I thought it would. Good for JTE for kind of coming back from kind of all he's been through.
JTE has been solid on this comeback too. Like he hasn't missed a beat since he's stepped back into the league. He's had great matches all the way across the board, even in free for all. Obviously, he was third, second, whatever.
I feel like Sean and Sabina, and I love Sabina. I like having that female presence in that sort of niche side of things. And she's always kind of held her own as well. So I really enjoy her. I feel like they both lend themselves well to things like the free-for-all or kind of special events or maybe even like Inner Geekdom type stuff.
Right.
I just don't know that they're cut out for the team league or singles league without like really honing in on kind of the focused part of the Schmoedown. So
And I'd agree with that. I think, and especially so this time in the league with Team League, that it's just crazy. I mean, it just is like it's just this viper nest full of a league, and then we have. I feel like there's a very clear divide in quality of teams where you have teams that are all potential champion runners, and then the other teams that have been sticking together, but they're just not of that quality or they don't put that time in. And that's nothing against them. You know, any given Sunday, we could have an upset with any of these teams against any of the other teams I'm talking about. But superhero news, I mean, they even said themselves at the end of their interview that a lot of their stuff tends to be blending together. A lot of their strengths are the same, so there's not a lot of compensing on this one. Just to kind of briefly touch on the match, it was strange though. So I was looking at the first round score, and it's 11-8. So they actually did really well in the first round, and I think that held up great. But then we get the wheel round. They roll 80s, and they lose off of it. I won't even go into the third round because the 80s just floors them. They go into KO territory, and the Evil Genius just clear from there. Which is why both of our reactions on talking about this match is just
yeah. Well, and I mean, honestly, that's round number 2 is kind of where my opinions are based on, because like you said, they held together pretty well in round number 1.
Right.
But round number 2, I mean, it was kind of a situation where neither of them really knew the answers. It wasn't like you could rely on one to know the answers or the other to know like certain answers. It was like they were both kind of guessing, and kind of when you have both of them looking at each other not knowing what to guess, it was rough.
Right. And I don't think any team in the at this point with where the team in the league is at, like round 2 is the most important round. I mean, I would say it's always the most important round, but more so than anything right now is that you don't want to ever go to the wheel and to even have anything on that wheel that both of you don't know, because if you do, one, just the cruel fate that is the wheel will just land on it, but 2, it puts you in a situation that just knocks you out like that. Like the league has come too far to sit here and to not be at least a fit. Know enough about each little category, or at least have a teammate that does. Like that's how far the team league has come. So with that in mind, we roll into the conclusion of the match where they announce that they're splitting up, and probably the most civil, humble breakup of any team in all of Schmoedown history. Thinking on it, I was oh, that's good for them. That's a very mature breakup. It's not all about the drama and the chaos and the kayfabe. I think they both were just like, well, we'll find somebody else that matches better as a team, but we're just not that. We're still going to do our thing. So what do we care?
Yeah. And like you kind of going back to the first topic that we talked about is, you know, do either of one of these competitors kind of mesh with Stacy? And I think they do on a balance standpoint, but the whole corruption thing, I don't know.
Right. I look at the tone of both of them, and it's just Sean Gerber. I think Sean Gerber or Sabina, I mean, their strengths are relatively the same. I think they both actually float really well with Stacy if we're to kind of tie this all back into hers. But again, I don't see Sean trying to be like this big corruption heel guy. I don't see Sabina doing that. I think the only thing that I could see, maybe if they're just really kept to themselves about it, and like they're just, I mean, there's enough mouthpieces in corruption. I guess they could sit there and get away with it. Stacy's a pretty big mouthpiece at this point, so they just let Stacy rock it, and they can just kind of be like the Drew McWeeny to Stacy, character-wise, anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna say. Was like very Drew McWeeny about it. Very like he's not as into corruption, but he's kind of the whatever it takes to get a win.
And I think that's
he'll roll with whoever.
Right. Yeah. So that's going to be the ever-plaguing thing. Let me go into the schedule. Yeah, because we will find out May 6th. Yeah, so next week? Is that next week? No, that's week after next. So in 2 weeks, we will find out who the hell the Stacy's partner is, because I am tired of guessing at this point. Honestly, I really want to see who they're up against, because the last few couple of, I don't want to say bottom-tier teams, but I mean, there's just the champion level teams and then everybody else. And I think amongst the everybody else teams, everybody else has already kind of been paired up to the other new founding teams. I'd be surprised who they matched up with. I would be especially amazed if they put them up against a time machine, because that's one, that's already a very heated match, is Janine against Stacy again. But 2, that's usually whenever you're putting the new teams in, you want to give them kind of like a softball team. And we've seen that already with Wildberry's match and Double Toasted and Inky and the Brand for the Family. All these other like teams you can tell are not of the same quality, and that's nothing against them. They could still win, but on paper they lose that match. So I'm actually really intrigued to see what that match is. But speaking of matches coming up that I'm also intrigued to see, at the end of this match with Evil Geniuses against Superhero News, they gave us a small little teaser vid referencing back to Makuga, who had been suspended after being disrespectful to the belt, however hilarious that was. And it talks with Sam Levine, and he says essentially, all right, cool, fine. You can be unsuspended, but you have a match with Paul Oyama. If you lose to Paul, then you're suspended for another month. So we'll start to wrap up this wonderful video and say, all right, Paul Oyama and Makuga on Monday. Melissa, who do you got?
I think I have Paul. Honestly, okay, here's where I think it kind of boils down to. I think anytime Josh Makuga is in the match, and I don't think I'm wrong to say this, but anytime Josh Makuga is in a match, you will see certain categories that aren't usually in the matches kind of flow into round 1 and round 3.
Mm-hmm.
Things like maybe 80s movies or 80s comedies, or just certain things that aren't normally categories between other competitors. They tend to, or aren't in Sly, or things like that.
Right.
Anytime Makuga or Dagnino, for that matter, are in a match, they tend to make their way into the mix. So I have Paul, but I'm kind of leaning against that on the basis of how much Makuga forward questions are there going to be.
Right.
I think that's going to kind of ultimately make the decision on will Makuga stay in it long enough to, because I mean he has had some legitimate wins, he's had some legitimate close calls. So I'm not going to say Paul's going to like wipe the floor with him. I think all things being equal, I think Paul is probably going to be the better competitor in that match. But like I said, just kind of depending on where the questions land, it'll kind of give us an idea of if it'll be a close match or if it'll be pretty much a kind of an easy match for Paul.
I would agree with that one as well. I think that we do tend to see, and I think that's the subtle behind-the-scenes stuff on Schmoedown, how they kind of help balance some of the scales, because, again, on paper, Paul came in very, very strong, and granted, the argument is that Makuga's been playing the game for a long time, and that he is probably the biggest wild card we have in the league, give or take Guy at this point. I think Guy actually might have that record against Makuga at this point. But looking at just what he can do, I mean, there's a lot of things to keep in mind, though. Makuga is an older dude, so if they played 80s comedies or something like that, then it'd be one of those things where, all right, well, if Paul hasn't studied it, then Makuga might just have the edge just on the age factor on it. But strangely enough, I don't know. I want a really close match on this one, because I feel like these past 2 matches that we've talked about were they went by the books. Founding Fathers won, Evil Geniuses won, and they won pretty clearly. So I do kind of want to see the singles league match to go to the wire. But in my head, I feel like there's going to be a KO or something. It's going to be a KO. Oddly enough, though, I couldn't tell you where I think the KO will go. I think Paul's going to walk away with this win as well. But I'm always for a wild card thing with it, where it just comes out to be Makuga KOs him or something like that. But I also do want to see Paul keep on winning because he's an Action Army guy as well. So.
Yeah, but it's kind of a nice match, regardless of the circumstances that brought on the match. Kind of having a new, kind of the young gun taking on an establishment figure that's been there since season 1. I think it's kind of a good, because we just don't get those matches all that often. Usually we're getting a lot of matches between people that were like kind of in there between like season 2, 3, 4. Those seem to kind of circulate a lot, but to get someone who's like very new to, someone, I mean, because really the people that were around on season 1 just aren't competing a lot anymore. So, I mean, this is really kind of one of those matches where we're going to get, it's kind of a rare thing. One thing I do want to bring up is kind of the circumstances of the suspension, especially in comparison with Andrew's suspensions in the past. Do we think that Makuga's suspension was fair? Do we think it was fair in comparison to Drew's suspensions in the past? I will say kind of for me, and then I'll pass it on to you. Sure. I do kind of feel like I think Makuga knew he could cross the line. I think you could kind of tell that. And even Jen in the post interview said, I mean, people were visibly like, And I mean, I was kind of glad that, I mean, Dan took it with a grain of salt. I mean, he was kind of like a little upset, but I mean, clearly he kind of was
yell at him to pick up the belt after he did.
He did, but I mean, in the past we would have seen Dan like steaming about it. We would have seen him like salivating out of his mouth from being so angry, and he did seem to kind of get past it pretty quickly. So I think it probably was suspension worthy. But as far as Andrew, I mean, I just don't feel like Andrew got the same treatment as far as getting a match immediately to get himself back into contention. It took Ben going to New York to plead for Drew to be allowed back into the kind of back into the Schmoedown so that there could be a match between them. And even then, I mean, Ben kind of had to beg to have it done. So, I mean, it is interesting that, I mean, one, it's not even getting drawn out very long. I mean, it's like literally the next week,
right,
we're getting a conclusion to this. And, I mean, like I said, I do think Paul will win. I think Makuga's suspension will stand. But I'm curious kind of what you think about how the suspensions have been handled comparatively.
I think at this point we can call this season not only the Magic season, but the suspension gate season. Because between this one and Drew and the Roxy suspension as well, I think that there's a lot of probably inconsistency across the board with it, where I think it probably is fair after the fact that he did get suspended for pushing the belt and being disrespectful and stuff like that. If I'm comparing the two, honestly, I would say the first time around, Drew probably got off pretty light. I mean, on screen, he tackles a person. Like, realistically, if that wasn't the kayfabe fact to it, then we would never see Drew. We probably would never even see the match. But there's a certain amount of kayfabe to it, and we know after the fact that Guy was really busy for those next couple months, so they probably just let it be that 3-month period. But if we're looking into the kayfabe of it to that much, I think 1 month almost is a little bit extra. But at the same time, I mean, when would be Makuga's next match otherwise? Wildberries have played they play like once a year for the most part. So I mean, they could suspend them, and we wouldn't even know twice.
True.
Why I think that a suspension on somebody like Makuga or somebody who's not going to have those many matches is a little bit silly. But I'm okay with it. They could give him they could say that it was going to be a year-long ban afterwards or something like that for many matches, and we wouldn't know any better because we've had our Wild Bears match this year. We're going to have our Makuga singles match, which I'm stoked about. But I'd be surprised if we saw him again after this. So,
yeah.
But yeah, suspensions are all kind of just a little all over the place, especially with Roxy having a match. They just kind of like, let's just have a match, kind of determine where this all lands, and then have a rough idea on where it goes. But it almost makes me wonder if that's not one of the things they talk about in the meetings as well. Is they're like, all right, well, if you break this rule, like, and even within kayfabe's sake, is there at least like, all right, well, this is a 1-month suspension, this is a 3-month suspension, this is a perma ban. Like, where's the line? I think that'd be an interesting Inside Schmoedown episode, having like Harloff or Ellis on or something like that, and talking about suspensions because they've been so adamant this season.
Yeah. Well, before we sign off, one thing I think we should both mention is Nashville. We are the founding members of Nashville. Please come to Nashville Schmoedown. So, yeah, if you agree with us that Nashville is a great like central point, great food city, great, I mean, just easy to get around. If you think it would be great to see the Schmoedown come to Nashville, definitely let Mr. Harlock know. Tweet about it, comment it when they have the polls out. Vote for it. We want it to come to Nashville.
Nashville. It is 45 minutes away from my home. I would love to sit there and do it. It's a central hub. It's fantastic. It's cheap to fly into. Nashville, Schmoedown, Nashville. Come see it. Buy tickets. It's not scheduled yet, but buy tickets and show them that you would go, and maybe it will get scheduled. And I put a sweet match there after the fact. Can we get hashtags Nashville Smoke or Schmoedown Nashville on this video? I think we should.
Agreed.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so for all you lovely people, for me, there are no social media ways to contact me other than on Facebook in the Action Army Facebook page, as well as the Movie Trivia Schmoedown Facebook page. And then Dylan, where can the good people reach you and all of our other lovely people?
Oh, they can catch me at CAMACH Octopus on Twitter. I've said many times, go on there on Twitter. If you're actually a fan, you want to holler at me, cool, more power to you. I'm not the most active. You'll catch me talking with 2 or 3 of the same friends. You can also catch me on the Facebook group, on Movie Trivia Schmoedown group, on the Action Army group, on the Action Industries. You can also catch, speaking of Action Industries, you can catch at Action Industries, at Andrew Guy, at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those great places. You can catch them at their shows with Action Guys on Collider and Action Movie Anatomy on the Popcorn Talk Network, both on YouTube. And you can check out their Patreon with Action Industries. They are coming up and they're supposed to be doing a watch along here soon. Or they just recently did one with the Avengers. I forget which it is. But you can find out yourself by checking out their Patreon page.
Yep. All right. Well, you guys have a great week. We will be checking in with you sometime, maybe next week or the week after. But have a great week. Bye.
Bye, guys.